The galaxy had grown tired of war. Not because it was brutal, but because it was predictable. Empires clashed, fleets burned, worlds fell. Victory could be calculated before the first shot was fired. Entire civilizations were reduced to equations, their extinction nothing more than a statistical certainty. There was no thrill left, no fear. So the Zarathi Dominion created something new. A hunt. Earth was not chosen for its strength. It wasn't the most advanced world, not the richest, not the most unified. In fact, its inhabitants were considered volatile, fractured by conflict, driven by irrational emotions. But it was labeled a death world. High gravity, unstable ecosystems, apex predators at every level of the food chain. Survival itself was a constant battle. To the Dominion, that made humans interesting. To the audience, watching across the stars, it made them entertaining. The rules were simple. A selection of humans, captured from across Earth, would be released into controlled environments. Massive biomes constructed for the spectacle. Burning forests, frozen wastelands, shattered cities rebuilt from ruins. Then the hunters would be unleashed. They were called gravehounds, towering creatures engineered for perfection. Six-limbed, armored and layered chitin that could deflect energy rounds. Their muscles were dense enough to shatter steel. Their senses could detect heat, vibration, and even neural activity. Fear itself became a beacon. They did not tire. They did not hesitate. They did not fail. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy watched something they hadn't felt in a long time. Anticipation. The broadcast began with a low, resonant horn. Across dozens of zones, humans were released. Some ran immediately, panic overtaking reason. Others froze, eyes wide as they took in alien skies and unfamiliar terrain. A few tried to fight, grabbing whatever they could find. It didn't matter. The gravehounds were already hunting. In Zone 12, a dense jungle where the air itself seemed to breathe, 3 humans sprinted through tangled roots and hanging vines. Their lungs burned, legs screaming for rest. Behind them, something moved. Not loudly, not recklessly, but with purpose. One of them glanced back. That was the mistake. The gravehound burst from the undergrowth, like a living avalanche. Its massive body crushed trees, as if they were nothing. 6 glowing eyes locked onto its prey. The first human didn't even have time to scream. The second tried to fight, swinging a broken branch like a weapon. The gravehound bit through it, and then through him. The third kept running. The audience cheered. Predictable, one commentator said, voice smooth and amused. Their instincts are purely reactive. Fear-driven, another added. They lack coordination, no strategy. Across the zones, similar scenes played out. Humans hunted, humans dying, humans losing. But then, Zone 7 changed everything. It was a forest of ash. Blackened trees stretched toward a gray sky, their branches like skeletal fingers. The ground was soft with soot, every step leaving a mark. A human moved through it slowly. He was injured badly. Blood soaked through his side, each step uneven. His breathing was shallow, controlled. Behind him, the ash shifted. The gravehound emerged, larger than the others. Its chitin darker, its movement slower, but deliberate. Intelligent. It had been tracking him for nearly an hour. The commentators leaned forward. This one lasted longer than most. Not for much longer. The creature advanced. The human stopped. For a moment, the entire galaxy held its breath, because the human didn't run. He turned. His face was pale from blood loss. Dirt and ash clung to his skin. But his eyes were steady, focused. The gravehound lowered its body, preparing to lunge. The distance closed. 10 meters. 5. It attacked. But the human moved forward. The ground beneath the gravehound gave way. A hidden pit, covered in ash and debris, collapsed under its weight. Jagged metal spikes shot upward, piercing its underbelly. The creature roared, thrashing violently. The human didn't hesitate. He was already moving. From his side, he pulled a shard of alien alloy, sharpened to a crude but deadly edge. He leapt into the pit. The gravehound snapped at him, jaws closing inches from his arm. One of its limbs broke free, swinging wildly. It caught him across the chest, sending him crashing against the spikes. Bones cracked. Still, he didn't stop. He drove the blade into its throat. Once, twice, again, again. The creature's movements slowed. Its roars became choked, wet sounds. And then, silence. The human stayed there for a moment, breathing hard. Then he pulled himself out of the pit. The cameras zoomed in. Across the galaxy, billions watched. He stood over the corpse, covered in blood. His and the creature's. Slowly, he looked up, directly at the sky, at the watchers, and he smiled. The broadcast room fell silent. That, one observer whispered, was not instinct. Deep within the Dominion command chamber, a senior overseer leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Run the next wave," he said. Across the zones, more gravhounds were released. More hunts began. More humans were pushed to their limits. But something had changed. In Zone 3, a group of humans moved together, not speaking, yet coordinated. In Zone 9, a gravhound stepped into a trap, so precise it had been built hours in advance. In Zone 14, a creature vanished entirely, its signal cutting out mid-hunt. The numbers started to shift. Not dramatically. Not yet. But enough. The analysts adjusted their projections. Minor anomaly, they reported, within acceptable parameters. But the overseer didn't look convinced, because for the first time, the prey wasn't just running. They were learning. And somewhere deep in the system, a new pattern was forming. The hunt had begun, but it wasn't going the way it was supposed to. Fire. The Dominion did not panic. They adjusted. Released the second tier. The overseer ordered calmly. Across the void, hidden bays opened. Containment fields dropped. And something far worse than gravhounds stepped into the light. They were called Night Stalkers. Where gravhounds relied on brute force, these creatures were something else entirely. They didn't chase. They didn't roar. They waited. Their bodies were lean, almost skeletal, wrapped in shifting skin that bent light itself. They moved between shadows as if the darkness belonged to them, phasing from one patch of black to another in a blink. Their claws weren't just sharp. They were precise. "These will correct the anomaly," one Dominion analyst said confidently. "They always do." The horn sounded again, a deeper tone this time. Across the zones, the sky dimmed. Lights flickered. Shadows stretched unnaturally long. And then, the Night Stalkers began the hunt. At first, the results were absolute. In Zone 5, a human barely had time to blink before something moved behind him. Then through him. His body collapsed in two silent pieces. In Zone 11, a group huddled together, whispering plans. The shadows around them shifted. None of them screamed. They were simply gone. The audience relaxed. A wave of satisfaction rippled through the broadcast. "Balance restored," a commentator said with a satisfied tone. "Predictability reestablished." But in Zone 3, something didn't fit. The feed flickered. Static crawled across the screen. Then stabilized. An abandoned city. Concrete skeletons of collapsed buildings. Broken glass reflecting dim, artificial moonlight. Streets choked with debris. Silent. Too silent. A Night Stalker moved along a wall, its form barely visible, blending with the darkness. Its movements were fluid, unnatural, perfect. It paused. There should have been something. Fear. Movement. Life. Instead, nothing. The creature tilted its head slightly, listening. Then it stepped forward. The ground exploded beneath it. A flash of light. A deafening crack. The pavement collapsed into a pit lined with jagged metal and twisted debris. The Night Stalker shrieked, a sound unlike anything recorded before, as its body was torn open. But it didn't die. It phased, vanishing from the pit, and reappearing in a nearby shadow, only to trigger another trap. A net of conductive wire snapped tight around it, crackling with stolen energy from Dominion tech. The creature convulsed, its form flickering violently as the current disrupted its phasing ability. For the first time, a Night Stalker was trapped. The audience leaned forward, confused, uneasy. Then the humans stepped out. Not one, not two, a dozen. They emerged from buildings, from rubble, from the very shadows the creature once controlled. Covered in dust, blood, ash, armed with crude weapons, metal shards, salvaged energy cores, sharpened debris. They moved with purpose. No shouting. No hesitation. The Night Stalker lashed out, its claws slicing through the air, trying to phase again. It failed. One human approached carefully, holding a piece of flickering tech. "Now," he said quietly. The others moved. The first strike hit the creature's leg, crippling it. The second took an eye. The third. The broadcast cut. For 3 seconds, the galaxy saw nothing but static. When the feed returned, the Night Stalker was gone. Only pieces remained. And the humans? Gone. In their place, a symbol burned into the pavement. A crude mark. Jagged. Deliberate. The commentators struggled to speak. This behavior is irregular. One stammered. Uncoordinated species are not capable of this level of planning. Another added, voice strained. In the Dominion command chamber, silence spread. "They're not just reacting anymore," a strategist said slowly. "They're anticipating." "Impossible," another snapped. "They lack centralized command. No shared language across groups. No synchronization." "Then explain this." More feeds appeared. Zone 9. A gravhound led into a collapsing structure, crushed under tons of debris. Zone 14. A hunting pack entering a narrow canyon, only to trigger a chain of explosions that sealed both ends. Zone 2. A lone human baiting a creature into open ground where others waited. Patterns. Across separate zones. Across isolated groups. The same tactics. The same ideas. They're learning from each other, the overseer said quietly. But that's not possible without communication. The overseer's gaze darkened. Who said anything about communication? The realization hit slowly. Then all at once. Humans didn't need orders. They didn't need a central command. They adapted. Individually. Collectively. Instinctively. The Dominion had studied them as prey. They had misunderstood them completely. Back in Zone 3, a camera drone, damaged but still recording, picked up movement. A single human stepped into view. The same one who had given the signal. He looked at the broken remains of the Night Stalker. Then up at the camera. For a moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, "We're not trapped with them." He smiled faintly. "They're trapped with us." The feed cut. And for the first time since the hunt began, the audience didn't cheer. They watched. In silence. Because something had shifted. The monsters were no longer in control. And the hunt was changing. Fire. The Dominion did not hesitate this time. They did not analyze. They did not debate. They escalated. "Release everything." The command echoed through the control chamber like a death sentence. Containment sectors across orbiting platforms opened in unison. Sealed vaults, some untouched for centuries, unlocked with heavy, mechanical finality. Inside them, things that were never meant to share the same world. They were not hunters. They were extinctions. Creatures pulled from the darkest corners of the galaxy, where entire civilizations had vanished without explanation. Bioforms that adapted mid-combat. Predators that consumed not just flesh, but energy. Entities that bent physics in subtle, terrifying ways. "These are not for sport," one junior strategist whispered. "No," the overseer replied coldly. "They are for endings." The horn did not sound this time. The sky tore open. Dropships descended like falling stars, crashing into every zone. The ground shook. Forests splintered. Cities cracked. And from the smoke, they emerged. In Zone 1, the frozen wasteland, the temperature dropped even further as something massive pushed through the ice. A creature of shifting mass, its body constantly reforming, spikes growing, retracting, forming new limbs in seconds. It moved forward. The ice beneath it didn't crack. It dissolved. In Zone 6, the burning jungle, a winged horror descended. Its shadow consumed the firelight, its wings stretching wider than the trees themselves. With every flap, the air screamed. In Zone 3, the ruined city, something worse arrived. Something quiet. The cameras struggled to track it, because it wasn't fully there. "Begin termination phase," the overseer ordered. Across the galaxy, the audience leaned forward again. This was what they had come for. Not a hunt, a massacre. But when the creatures began to move, they didn't find what they expected. There were no scattered humans, no desperate survivors, no fleeing prey. Instead, they found nothing. "Where are they?" an analyst demanded. Thermal scans lit up, then froze. They're gathering. In Zone 1, hundreds of heat signatures moved together across the frozen plain. In Zone 3, dozens converged through the ruined streets. In Zone 6, entire groups disappeared into the jungle, then reappeared at the same point. This is not possible, someone whispered. They have no communication network. But the data didn't lie. The humans were moving with purpose, toward something. And then, the first creature reached them. Zone 1. The shape-shifting horror surged forward, its body expanding, forming bladed limbs as it charged across the ice. It expected chaos, panic. Instead, it found a line. Humans stood shoulder to shoulder behind makeshift barriers of ice and wreckage, weapons raised, faces hardened, waiting. The creature lunged, and the world exploded. The ice beneath it shattered, not from its weight, but from beneath. Charges detonated in perfect sequence, sending it crashing into a pit of supercooled spikes. Before it could reform, they attacked. Energy weapons scavenged from fallen drones fired in coordinated bursts. Explosives followed, time precise. The creature adapted. Its body shifted, forming shields. Too slow. A human leapt forward, driving a weapon deep into its core, a glowing mass barely visible beneath its ever-changing form. The creature convulsed. And then, it died. Silence fell. They killed it. An analyst whispered. No. The overseer corrected quietly. They understood it. Across the zones, the same pattern unfolded. The winged beast in Zone 6 descended into the jungle. The canopy collapsed around it, trapped in a web of weighted cables and burning traps. Humans moved through the flames like ghosts, striking from every angle. In Zone 3, the unseen entity tried to hunt from the shadows. It found them waiting. Lights, mirrors, disruptors. They forced it into visibility. And once it was seen, it was vulnerable. They're learning too fast, a strategist said, voice trembling now. They're not just learning, another replied. They're predicting. The realization spread like a virus through the command chamber. The humans weren't reacting to the creatures. They were preparing for them, as if they had already fought them, already died to them, already learned their lessons, and refused to lose again. By the end of the cycle, the Dominion's losses were catastrophic. More than half of the released entities were gone, destroyed, neutralized, outplayed. The broadcast didn't show cheering anymore. It showed silence, because now across the galaxy, a new question was forming. Not can humans survive, but what happens when they stop trying to? In Zone 1, the surviving humans stood over the corpse of the shapeshifter, breathing hard, bloodied, alive. One of them looked at the sky, at the drones watching. Then he raised something in his hand. Not a weapon, a piece of the creature, a trophy, a message. And behind him, hundreds of others stood, not as prey, not as survivors, but as something else, something the Dominion had never planned for, something far more dangerous, an army. The hunt was broken, and now, it was war, fire. The broadcast numbers dropped, at first slowly, then all at once. Entire systems began cutting the feed, not out of boredom, but out of discomfort, because what they were watching now wasn't entertainment, it was fear. And for the first time in recorded history, it wasn't human. Across the zones, something unnatural had taken hold. The creatures, the Dominion's perfect hunters, were no longer advancing. They were retreating. Impossible, one analyst whispered, staring at the incoming data. Gravhounds do not retreat. Night stalkers do not hesitate. Yet the footage said otherwise. In Zone 8, a gravhound sprinted through a canyon, its massive body crashing against stone as it fled. Fled. Behind it, nothing visible. But the creature's behavior was unmistakable. It wasn't repositioning. It wasn't hunting. It was running for its life. Track what's behind it, the overseer ordered sharply. The drones adjusted, zoomed, scanned. Nothing. Just heat distortion. Movement too fast. Too precise. Then, a blur. A human. The footage glitched as the camera tried to keep up. The figure moved low, fast, cutting across terrain with impossible efficiency. No wasted motion. No hesitation. The Gravehound leapt over a ridge and didn't land. A trap. Not crude like before. Not desperate. Perfect. The ground collapsed into a narrow funnel lined with sharpened metal and conductive mesh. The creature howled, thrashing, but it didn't escape, because the human was already there. No roar. No warning. Just impact. Steel met flesh. Again. 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 The Gravehound's movement slowed, then stopped. Silence. The human stood over it, breathing steady, unshaken. Then he did something that made the entire command chamber go still. He didn't look at the corpse. He looked around, scanning, listening, hunting. Rewind that, the overseer said quietly. They did. Again and again. Each time, the same conclusion formed. That's not survival behavior, a strategist said. No, the overseer replied. That's predatory. Across the zones, more footage poured in. Zone 2. A night stalker moved through shadow, then froze. Something moved within the darkness. Not the creature. Something else. The night stalker tried a phase, and failed. A device human-made, activated, flooding the area with flickering pulses of energy that disrupted its ability. Then they came. Not one, not a group. 3. Moving in silence. The creature struck first, but it missed, because they had already anticipated it. One distracted, one flanked, one finished. Clean, efficient, final. They've mapped their behavior, an analyst said, voice hollow now. They've learned every pattern. More than that, another added. They're exploiting them. The realization spread like cold water through the room. The Dominion hadn't just underestimated humans. They had trained them. Every wave, every escalation, every new creature. It hadn't broken them. It had refined them. Across the battlefield, the transformation was undeniable. Humans no longer moved like prey. They didn't scatter, didn't panic, didn't hesitate. They controlled territory, set traps in layers, created kill zones, and most terrifying of all, they adapted in real time. In Zone 11, a massive bioform, one of the Dominion's oldest weapons, charged through a forest, uprooting trees as it hunted. It didn't see the humans, until it was too late. The ground beneath it shifted, not collapsing, but redirecting, guiding it, steering it into a narrow pass, a funnel, where everything was waiting. Explosions, spears, energy bursts. The creature roared, thrashing wildly, but every move it made was anticipated, countered, used against it. When it finally fell, the forest went still, and from the smoke, they emerged, not scattered survivors, a unit, silent, coordinated, dominant. Back in the command chamber, no one spoke, because the truth had become undeniable. This isn't a hunt anymore, one strategist whispered. No, the overseer said, his voice quieter than ever before. It hasn't been for a while. He leaned forward, watching as another feed came in. A Gravehound, cornered, not by terrain, by humans. It snarled, backing away, its massive form trembling. Trembling. That creature has never displayed fear, an analyst said. It has now. The Gravehound made a choice. It turned and ran, but didn't get far. The humans didn't chase immediately. They waited, let it run, let it tire, then followed, not as prey, not as survivors, but as something far worse. Hunters. The overseer exhaled slowly. They've crossed the line. What line? Someone asked, barely above a whisper. He didn't answer immediately, because the answer was obvious. They had stopped being hunted and started hunting. The Dominion had created the perfect spectacle, but they had made one critical mistake. They assumed humans would stay what they were. They didn't. They became something new, something the Dominion didn't understand, didn't control, didn't see coming. The broadcast continued, but no one was cheering anymore, because across the galaxy, a single, terrifying realization had taken hold. The monsters weren't the creatures. They were the humans, and the hunt was over. Fire. The order came without hesitation. Terminate the experiment. No debate, no analysis, no pride left to defend. The overseer's voice was calm, but beneath it, something had cracked. Extract all remaining assets, he continued. Purge the zones if necessary. No one questioned it, because everyone in that chamber understood the truth now. This was no longer controlled. This was no longer safe. This was no longer a hunt. It was a mistake. High above Earth, Dominion dropships shifted position. Massive engines ignited, casting burning shadows across the planet below. Extraction teams prepared. Containment protocols armed. Orbital weapons warmed. The plan was simple. Go down. Retrieve what could be salvaged. Erase the rest. Clean. Efficient. Final. But when the first dropship descended, it didn't find chaos. It found silence. Zone 1, the frozen wasteland, was still. No roaming creatures. No scattered survivors. No signs of conflict. Only bodies. The beasts. Everywhere. Massive forms frozen into the ice. Broken. Torn apart. Dismantled with brutal precision. Where are the humans? A pilot asked, scanning the horizon. No answer came, because the sensors found something else. Movement. Ahead. A line. The dropship slowed, hovering just above the ground. And then they saw them. Humans. Dozens at first. Then hundreds. Then more. Standing together. Not hiding. Not fleeing. Waiting. The ramp lowered. Dominion soldiers stepped out, armored, armed, trained for war across countless systems. They had faced entire armies before. But this was different, because the humans didn't react. They didn't charge, didn't shout, didn't threaten. They just stood there, watching. And in that silence, something shifted. One of the soldiers raised his weapon slightly, not to fire, just to steady himself, because something about the way the humans looked at them was wrong. There was no fear, no desperation, no uncertainty, only focus, only intent. They should be running, the pilot muttered. They should be begging. They should be quiet. The overseer's voice cut through the comms. Do not engage. But it was already too late. A gravehound, one of the last, burst from behind the dropship, charging blindly in panic. It didn't see the humans, only the open ground. Freedom. Escape. It never reached it. The humans moved. Not all of them. Just enough. A shift in formation. A step forward. Then, violence. Precise. Instant. The creature was taken down before it could even roar. The soldiers froze. Because what they had just witnessed wasn't chaos. Wasn't desperation. It was execution. Clean. Efficient. Practiced. The humans returned to stillness. As if nothing had happened. As if it didn't matter. The overseer stared at the feed. And for the first time, he felt it. Not curiosity. Not calculation. Fear. Pull them out. Someone whispered. Now. But the overseer didn't respond. Because he was watching something else. A single human stepping forward. Slowly. Deliberately. Unarmed. The soldiers tensed. Weapons raised instinctively. Hold your fire, the overseer ordered. The human stopped a few meters away. Close enough to be seen clearly. His armor was makeshift, pieces of alien tech fused with scavenged materials. His face was streaked with dirt and dried blood. But his eyes, sharp, awake, unafraid. He looked at the soldiers, then at the ship, then up, at the sky, at the Dominion. And then he spoke. You came to hunt us. His voice was calm, steady, not angry, not afraid, certain. No one responded. No one could. You brought monsters, he continued. A pause, a faint smile. And you taught us how to fight them. The silence deepened. You taught us how to survive. Another step forward. And now, his gaze hardened. You taught us how to hunt. The words landed like a shockwave. Across the comms, across the command chamber, across every system still watching. Silence. The overseer finally spoke. Withdraw. The order came fast now. Full extraction. All units. Immediately. No one argued. The soldiers backed away. Slowly. Carefully. Weapons still raised. But no shots fired. Because they understood. Firing would start something. They might not survive. The dropship lifted. Engines roaring as it ascended back into the sky. The humans didn't follow. They didn't chase. They didn't need to. They just watched. Waiting. Learning. Remembering. High above, the Dominion fleet pulled back, not in defeat, in retreat. Emergency signals spread across their network. Warnings sent to every system, every empire, every hunter. The final transmission was short, simple, unmistakable. Do not hunt humans. A pause. Then, they adapt. Another pause. Longer this time. They learn. And finally, the truth the Dominion would never forget. They hunt back, fire,